I think the dictionary definition of the word legendary means that the person has to be dead.
This is Peter Molyneux. Do you ever lie awake at night thinking about what happened to him? No, me neither. He's a game developer, visionary, and on occasion, a professional liar. Now in 2012, Molyneux launched an app called Curiosity, where a student from Scotland was promised to be turned into a god. But I'll come back to him. For Peter, however, it was the beginning of the end. I'm the Game Dad, and this is how Godus became the worst Kickstarter in gaming history. Now, a quick history lesson. Curiosity was built entirely in-house at 22 Cans, the studio that were yet to make Godus. It was 22 Cans' debut release, out before Godus even existed as a public project. Credited to Peter Molyneux as designer, producer Gemma Harris, and programmers Gary Leach and Tim Rance, it was a mystery box disguised as a game, launched as a mobile app with one goal: to strip away 69 billion cubelets. They're tiny cubes to you and me. The whole experiment played out over 6 months. And just to add to the fun, you could also use your hard-earned cash to strip huge chunks of the cube away, or use the pay-to-troll mechanic. You could restore them. And at the centre of Curiosity, a prize, which Molyneux described as life-changingly amazing. What was actually inside? He wouldn't say. Not yet, anyway. Now, with Curiosity ticking along in the background, on the 21st of November 2012, 22 Cans launched its first Kickstarter. Molyneux and his gang were trying to raise £450,000 in just 30 days, with the campaign due just to end before Christmas. And the pitch for Godus went as follows: you're a god, not a metaphor, an actual deity, poking at tiny civilization with your fingers or a mouse. You raise land, you flatten it, you guide your followers to where you want them to be, and you watch them build. Believe in you enough and they grow, worship you enough, and they get more power to reshape the world underneath them. Molyneux called it a reinvention of Populous, the game that started the entire god game genre back in 1989. And on paper, the ambition was a biggie, taking the raw godlike power of Populous, adding in the multiplayer construction and mischief of Dungeon Keeper, add the living, reactive world of Black and White, where your choices could actually change how the pocket world was shaped. 3 of the most influential god games ever made, smashed together by the man who made all of them. So that's the elevator pitch, a spiritual successor from the actual inventor of the genre. 20 years later, with modern technology behind it, it's probably one of the best pitches in Kickstarter history. And what we actually got? Well, we'll get there. So back to the Kickstarter in question. Tiers range from £15, which got you a digital copy of the game, which is what I spent. Did I mention that? I was an actual backer of Godus. Yet more proof that I haven't got a clue what makes a good video game. A quick side note, if you haven't seen my retrospective on limit theory, there might be some foreshadowing on where this is going. Or you might be smart enough to work this one out for yourself from the video's title. Anyway, back to the tiers. Starting at £15, all the way up to £5,000, which got you a ticket to E3 and a chance to be interviewed by the man himself. And here are the numbers to frame the scale of Godus. The Kickstarter raised over £520,000 from over 17,000 backers, against a £450,000 goal. Now add in PayPal donations, and the true total was roughly £541,000, which, if you allow for inflation today, would be nearly £900,000. So putting that into perspective, Godus actually launched into a mammoth year of fan-funding games, putting itself up against some games you might have heard of. Double Fine kicked off the boom, raising $3.3 million for what would eventually become Broken Age, and 2012 also saw Pillars of Eternity raise nearly $4 million. So next to the big boys, Godus was pretty small, but it still raised 8 times what the average Kickstarter campaign pulls in. Against giants, Godus looked modest. Against everyone else, well, it did alright, above average. And we consider above average alright, don't we, boys? But it was Molyneux's pedigree to why people trusted the pitch. Populous, Black and White, Dungeon Keeper. 3 foundations of the gaming industry. 3 reasons to back Godus. Little did we know what was coming, or more specifically, what wasn't. So, who actually are 22 Cans?
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Well, let's take a second and rewind. In February 2012, Molyneux walked away from Microsoft and Lionhead. He'd spent 6 years there after they bought Lionhead, his old studio, back in 2006. Now he wanted something smaller, something that was his, to chance riskier and more experimental projects. But he didn't do it alone. Molyneux brought Tim Rance and Peter Murphy with him, Lionhead's old chief technology officer and company director. The same brains with a new name. And 22 Cans, the name of the new studio, wasn't from some random company name generator. Molyneux's plan was to handpick 22 people, the most talented and passionate people he could find. Why 22? Well, he said it's small enough to stay a tight-knit community, but big enough to deliver my dream. And by April of that year, he'd had over 1,000 applications for a company that was supposed to have 22 seats. Make of that what you will. This was the pitch, really, before we ever get to Godus. Not trust the game, it was trust me. Trust Peter Molyneux, the man who made Populous, who made Black and White. He made Fable, and walking away from Microsoft money to do it his own way one more time. It's a good story. Actually, it's a great story. Which is sort of the problem for Peter Molyneux stories. They're always great, right up to when they're not. And the studio kept its own recording of exactly when the turn happened. Oh, and you're probably wondering, 22 cans, they're still going? This year, actually, they've released Masters of Albion, another gold game, and why wouldn't it be? Molyneux called it the culmination of his life's work, which he said about the last one. You've got to give it to Peter. He's one confident f***er. The Godus Kickstarter promised something simple. Development transparency. We'll show you everything, they said. Genital warts and all. And true to their word, as soon as development started, the dev diaries began. Molyneux sat down with Jack Attridge to talk about what the team had been working on. And Attridge, it wasn't some random hire by the way. He'd already worked at EA, Rebellion, Mind Candy. He had some actual gaming pedigree. But at 22 cans, he was employee number 1. The very first person Molyneux brought onto the board. And for a while, it was just the two of them. Apparently they were designing crazy stuff together every single day. That was the energy the development diaries had. One legend and one rising talent riffing on God games. Now I'd love to be able to show you these clips, but every single Godus dev diary has been set to private on YouTube. It's almost like they're embarrassed of them. So you just have to make do with my fuzzy memory of them instead. Here's the thing though. Somewhere out there, an even better dev diary might already exist. One without Molyneux getting his fingers stuck in it. Because Attridge left 22 cans in 2015, but before he did, he put together his own documentary about the studio. Shot mostly on a GoPro, there's 2 years of footage. The foundings, the highs, plenty of lows, all of it. And that documentary was meant for the backers, but after scraping all of YouTube, I couldn't find that either. So make of that what you will. And here's where the arse really fell out of the project. That same year in 2015, after Godus' launch went badly wrong, the studio brought in a new CEO, Simon Phillips. Molyneux was forced to step back, a designer only from then on. The man whose name was above the doors no longer ran the company. And Attridge's exit itself? Weirdly gentle for a story this messy. Jack tells the story where he and Molyneux went on a 10-mile walk and said their goodbyes. No dramatic falling out, just two men going for a walk, probably a little bit of fellatio in the woods. I'm adding that bit in, that probably didn't happen. Anyway, that kind of goodbye was more than Godus ever got. So what actually happened to the game while all this was going on behind closed doors? Let's launch my original copy of the game and have a look. What was Godus actually like to play? Well, as I remember playing it. Here's the thing, for the first hour or so, it's actually really good. The sculpting felt genuinely nice. Pushing land up with a swipe of your mouse, it felt like the culminations of all the God games that had come before it. Like you're actually shaping something. The animations were charming too. Watching your little followers build, evolve, and go about their tiny lives. It had charm. The graphics were basic, simple shapes, bright colours, thin outlines. The basic's not always bad. It had warmth to it, like a storybook you read to your kids. Even reviewers who ended up hating the game admitted this bit. One person called the sculpting a particular joy. Another said the art style alone made them want to keep playing. So far, so promising, right? Then you hit the combat, and everything just falls apart. Now, the fight system was meant to feel like Populous, huge armies going to battle. I think Peter actually sold it like a total war game, but mixed in with the classic God genre. What you actually got, however, was your followers wandering past enemies, without fighting them back. Champions attacking buildings instead of people. Armies just not doing what you told them. One community post described troops as walking straight past the enemy without retaliating. Now, you should be able to forgive Godus for its bugs and issues. It did release into early access after all, but the problem was the game never got past this stage. Whether it was the case of the game being released too soon, scope creep, or its creators just giving up because things got tough. Well, we'll just never know. Because Godus wasn't a bad idea. It was just executed badly from the start. It was a great idea, half finished, propped up by charm, and then abandoned before it could all work. Which weirdly brings us to now. If you're watching this today, it's probably 2026, 13 years after Godus. Molyneux's just released another God game, Masters of Albion, and frankly, I think people have given up before it's even got its chance. I'm not going to play Masters of Albion. Once bitten, twice shy and all that. But from watching interviews with Molyneux, it looks like the same lies, just a different day. So, back to Godus. The concept seemed good. Yes, the combat system is annoying and broken, but these are not the types of things to sink a Kickstarter. Backers can forgive a bad update, they can forgive bugs, but what they can't forgive is being lied to. So back to 2015, and things were literally falling apart for Molyneux. Attridge had now jumped ship, a new CEO had been brought in, and backer backlash was fierce. Peter's original believers had turned on their god. The Kickstarter's comment section was absolutely rife with hate and vitriol for the game's creator. There were accusations of disgraceful treatment and lies. Fans had trusted Molyneux again, and been let down again. Duncan Gray summed things up pretty perfectly 6 years ago.
60 quid pledge. No personalized loading screen. No exclusive god power. No animal familiar. No t-shirt. Does this entitle me to a refund for this piece of trash that was created versus what was promised, that I would back again if someone else promised it? Money back, please. Pledge commitments were not fulfilled. Ashamed, I was excited. It would be something awesome. Sad, smiley face.
So, what's a god to do when he's upset his community of fans? You pivot focus to a different game, of course. That game was The Trail, released in 2017, and to this day, it's got decent reviews and was pretty well received at launch. Now, I'm not going to dwell on The Trail here, that's not what this video is about, but here's what's worth knowing. The pivot didn't happen after 22 cans were finished with Godus. It happened while Godus was still broken, and by the end of 2014, the Godus team had shrunk down just to 3 people. 3. For a game that raised over £500,000 from 17,000 backers. Obviously, Molyneux disputed that staff were being pulled off Godus and onto The Trail, but the numbers didn't really back him up. And the remaining Godus team, those remaining 3 people, they actually admitted that they couldn't deliver the features promised on the Kickstarter campaign. Lead designer Konrad Nedinsky said it for himself in a forum post.
I simply can't see us delivering all the features promised on the Kickstarter page.
And honestly, to me, one of the campaign's original backers, might I add, this one feels like a real kick in the balls. Not because it's shocking, because by this point, nothing about Godus is shocking. It stings because of who said it. Nedinsky wasn't an outside hire brought in to clean someone else's mess. He started out as a backer, someone who believed in Godus. He believed in Godus enough to put his whole livelihood at risk. And now here he was, on the inside, telling the rest of us it was never going to happen. Less of a developer update, more of a fan breaks news from himself, to himself, about himself. It's heartbreaking, really. He, like the rest of us, he believed in Godus. He believed in it so much he tried to help build it. And as he built it, he came to the realization that no matter what, Godus could never live up to the hype. But Konrad, he wasn't the one who lost the most. Not even close. There's one person in this story. Do you remember him from the start of the video? The one who was promised to become a literal god? His disappointment makes Konrad's look like finding out the orgy's got a dress code. Remember what I told you earlier about the prize at the centre of the Curiosity Cube?
It's not a huge pile of money. A dead cat, a sports car, or Half-Life 3
Molyneux said, but whatever inside would
change your life forever.
Well, essentially it was a pile of cash. I know, right? The prize, titled God of Gods, granted that status in the game, and 1% of the game's revenue. Let's put that into perspective for a sec. If Godus had been as successful as Minecraft, you know, that little indie game, then the winner would have walked away with roughly $42 million. And even using his own back of the fag packet maths, and in his own words said,
"Depending on how well the game does, I could get £10,000 to £500,000 at the very best."
Now, who was that winner? Bryan Henderson, an 18-year-old graphic design intern from Edinburgh, Scotland. He did visit the 22 Can studio once in 2015, met Molyneux briefly, and then was largely forgotten. Talk about ghosting. In his own words, Bryan mentioned,
"It was a shoddy operation in terms of communication. You're supposed to do everything and be the professional one out of me and you."
And also he mentioned he got bored of the actual game in about 2 hours, which does link up to the amount of time I put into Godus. So the final blow came in March 2017. Molyneux confirmed Godus wasn't profitable, so Henderson, you'd never see a penny. Peter later claimed,
"We never took a penny of money from people."
Despite telling Wired back in 2013 that the game already generated a few tens of thousands in revenue. For what it's worth, Molyneux did eventually apologise.
"I should never have called it life-changing."
That's the phrase in the very start of this video, and that's what it turned into for Bryan. A t-shirt, a poster, and a ton of unanswered emails. So where does this leave us? Firstly, I don't think Peter's evil. He's just bad at what he does. No offence to you, Peter, if you're watching, but it's time to stop spouting this unrealistic grandeur. Now let's bring this back to me for a second. You know, this is my channel after all. I backed Godus 2, remember, £15 for a digital copy. I actually checked back at my Steam library the other day, and I got 4 hours of playtime out of Godus. Bryan Henderson got nothing. Not a penny. Just a t-shirt and a poster. It's the same studio, the same broken promises, but 2 very different flavours of disappointment. Bryan believed enough to see his prize realised. I believed enough to pay 15 quid and walk quietly away. Honestly, I think I got the better deal.
I got home, closed my bedroom door, started playing with myself.
And that's everything I've got to say on the topic of Godus. Did I miss anything? Probably not, because I am the god of video game documentaries. And before you click away, here's another one of my videos for you to watch. YouTube's picked this one just for you because it knows you'll like it. So go on, give it a watch.